Just first tell us a little bit about this seismic shift we've seen in the sector, where Chinese healthcare, long seen as Chinese copycats, I guess, to the Western world, now they've become more innovators. What really is driving that change?
Yeah, it's interesting. I know the big stock market news this morning is Alibaba, and I'm a big believer that the next Alibaba is going to be a biotech company. And what I mean by that is a couple decades ago, you had entrepreneurs like Jack Ma who kind of saw what was happening in Silicon Valley and have started what are now world-class innovative leaders in the tech sector. And we're in the very beginnings of that just happening in biotech. I think there's a bright future here. So for example, I'm in Beijing today and I visited a company, BeiGene, yesterday. And 2 weeks ago, they had a cancer medicine, Brukinsa, approved in the United States by the US FDA. And it's the first example of a Chinese company having a new cancer drug approved in the United States. So it's a great example of how innovation is starting to happen here today. And we're in the very early stages of that. I think it's going to be very exciting over the coming years to watch it unfold.
Brad, oncology is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, isn't it? Where are they with that? Because there seem to be all sorts of announcements coming through from various biotechs in China. Who's got the best, I suppose, pipeline for that? What about other things you might be excited about? Because we've also got a lot of movement on things like Alzheimer's too.
Yeah, without a doubt. Cancer is a big one for two reasons. Number one, that's where I think the most impactful science is happening today. We have something called immunotherapy, using the immune system to treat cancer, and targeted therapies, and a lot of exciting things using genomics in cancer. And also, sadly, the unmet need is huge here in China. Literally, almost a third of cancer patients are here in China, and until today, they've mostly received generic drugs and older chemotherapies, and thankfully today, now these new innovative drugs are being made available to them, and Chinese companies are helping develop them. I'm a big fan of that. There's a company called GenScript that has a division that's called cell therapy. That's using the patient's own cells to treat cancer. Their division, Legend Biotech, does that, and they're such leaders in this that Johnson & Johnson has partnered with them and is using the Chinese company's cell therapy technology in Europe and the United States. So I would certainly watch that. Alzheimer's is a difficult one. There was actually a drug approved here a few weeks ago. We're still all trying to figure out what that's all about. But the science isn't quite there yet, sadly, in the same way that it is in oncology. So hopefully we'll see more research in that direction, but we're a little ways off in Alzheimer's, sadly.
Brad, I'm curious then. We talk about these breakthroughs, and as Rish was pointing out, they've gotten a lot more frequent recently. Now, it's not as if these Chinese companies woke up and they were good at it. How much of their successes is down to support from the government?
It's huge. There's actually, I would say, a perfect storm of things that are really catalyzing the innovative biotech sector here. So government is certainly one. Pharmaceuticals is part of Made in China 2025, so there's a big focus on it. Another hugely important thing, when I talk to executives here, they actually say this is the most important change. China's FDA, which is now called the National Medical Products Administration, joined something called ICH a year and a half ago. ICH was created by FDA, the European regulators, and the Japanese regulators to harmonize regulatory standards across the globe. And by joining that, China companies now are developing drugs in exactly the same way as other companies around the world. So for example, BeiGene, most of their data for this cancer drug that was approved 2 weeks ago came from China. And FDA accepted that because the trials that are happening here today are of the same kind and of the same quality that are happening anywhere. And so joining ICH was an important thing. You've got stock market reforms. Of course, the Hong Kong Stock Exchange last year changed the rule to allow biotechs to list. If you don't have a stock market for a biotech sector, you can't have a biotech sector. I mean, this is a very capital-intensive business. And you need to be able to have a listing venue, and also for venture capital firms to have exits from their investments. so they can reinvest their money in newer startups. So, you know, there's literally 4 or 5 really important things that are all coming together. I think you guys are at the right place at the right time to really catalyze this biotech revolution here over the next 5 or 10 years.